Inspire Instructor podcast, where the learning never stops. Welcome you wonderful people to the Inspire Instructor Training podcast. So this is our final episode of the series, and we will be taking a short break following this. Today we have Tom Stenson on from audittrainer.com, and he is also the head trainer at the ADI NJC. So we talk about customer service, and we also discuss our final competency. At the end of the session was the pupil encouraged to reflect on their own performance. I'm going to take a short break and then we'll be back with season 3. Obviously we have now finished the competencies, so the episodes will be taking a new theme. What I want to do for the third season, and hopefully you guys will be looking forward to it, is take it in a direction of, we've had a look at the competencies, we've had a look at the national standards and what the DVSA want from us, and we've dug into the details of each one of those, and now I want to kind of have a series based on what looks good. So we quite often hear trainers talking about just go deliver a good lesson and it will meet the criteria. So what I want to do is have a series about what looks good, and we'll get some trainers on to talk about what they think looks good, and so that'll be season 3 coming soon. If you're missing me while we're on a short break, consider signing up to our membership at Inspire Instructor Training, or coming on one of our workshops. We're only human. Also, and I don't often ask this, so I probably should ask more, I would encourage you guys to go and subscribe to the podcast, because then when we do start with season 3, you will get that straight into your podcast feeds, ready to go, and you won't miss out. But for now, go and enjoy the last episode. So I'd like to welcome to the podcast Tom Stenson from audittrainer.com, and also the head of training at the ADI NJC. So welcome, Tom.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. So Tom, we always sort of I like to start these episodes with a little bit of chat around something to do with the industry before we move on to our competency. And I've been getting quite a lot of questions recently from ADIs and PDIs about what I see as customer service based sort of things. So potentially stuff like pupils wanting to go to tests when they're not ready, or pupils moving their tests, parents pushing in for the driving test, pupils cancelling and within like cancellation policies and situations like that. So I think first I'll just start opening it up quite nice and open for you. Do you have any sort of kind of tips with how you manage your customers or pupils?
Yeah, I think it can be a bit of a difficult one, because I think there is a lot of people out there who always want to please. And one of the things that I feel is potentially missed in instructor training is how to develop your business or how to manage your business. And I think that's kind of customer services. Different jobs that I've been in have often been revolved around customers. And for me, it always comes down to that sort of initial contact where you begin to speak to the customer and you sort of set out, I was going to say the guidelines, but you set out sort of that conversation of, this is what I expect, this is what I'm going to deliver, what would you expect? And for me, it sort of builds on from there, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're solo and you're out there on your own, you can start that with that first phone call, really, can't you? And if maybe you're a franchise and you'll be giving that pupil, I know with my guys, when we give them a pupil, we always say that they should call that pupil before the lesson starts so that they can introduce themselves. Again, this could be where that happens. I think it's quite important to have a clear set of terms and conditions,
Yeah,
as well, but also to talk to your pupils about it, because who reads the terms and conditions realistically?
yeah,
So to have a conversation and just maybe, I suppose for me, the big one would be the cancellation policy, and have that
yeah,
conversation. I remember Bob Morton talking about this, how I think it was Bob, it might have been Terry actually, or Bob on Terry's podcast. So talking about how like if someone cancels, maybe not necessarily charging them, or even just bringing it up about another pupil canceling, and it doesn't even have to be a true story. Just be like, oh, I had a
Yeah,
pupil cancel, or you wouldn't do that to me, though, would you? Because it cost me money, and like that's how you kind of bring it up.
yeah,
And just sort of kind of like I found that I didn't get this very often, which is why I kind of wanted to talk about it because obviously you do get the odd person who can be really challenging, but I found that I didn't get this, and I just wondered whether there was something. For me, it's communication.
mm,
I think it's being honest, letting them know what the situation is, because I think a lot of students and stuff don't necessarily realize that them canceling or them moving their tests or them saying, "Oh, can you fit me in on like tomorrow instead?" And I think they just think you're they're your only pupil, and they don't realize the situation. I remember an instructor a while ago said to me, that their pupil turned up and said, like, oh, what do you do for a living? And they were like, this is my
yeah,
job. Um, and I think that's just like how little they know about like kind of
yeah.
what we're doing. So I think it is just important to sort of kind of like talk to them and explain that. So is that something you kind of do with them? And
Yeah, whether I'm teaching learners or whether it's trainees, I think we have to have that initial conversation of sort of expectations and responsibility. And like you mentioned about perhaps saying to the learner, I had another learner who didn't turn up or so on and so forth. But I think I would go possibly the other way and say, how would you feel if I didn't turn up for your lesson? What are going to be your emotions? How are you going to feel? Or, how would you feel if you turned up at work and your boss said, actually, today I don't need you, you're not going to get paid? So it links to me to kind of this responsibility that people should be taking, not just for themselves, but for how their actions are going to affect other people. I have a cancellation policy, and it's one of the first things that I mention to people when I speak to them on the phone, that I expect that lesson to be paid for 48 hours before. And if it's not, that lesson may be sold to someone else. And in my terms and conditions, like you say, if they don't turn up for that lesson, it's at my discretion of whether I charge them. And I try and be fair, to be honest, Phil. If I can fill that lesson, I'm not going to double my money. I will be honest and say, you know, okay, I'll let you off this occasion. I managed to fill that space. So, but, please be aware for next time I might not be able to do it.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I agree that should be the case. And I think also particularly like you're there with the pupils week in, week out. So this a little bit is about building rapport as well.
Yeah.
So I think if you have a good rapport with these pupils and you're having these conversations, like you say, it just prevents it. It prevents it becoming a problem, rather than handling it once it's already a problem.
Yeah.
Um, on that note, um, what about the whole pressure to take someone to a driving test? Like what's your managing situation for that?
I think there's a couple of things, and something that I didn't recognize early on when I started this job is that although we're client centered, my client isn't always necessarily the pupil. It is sometimes the parents as well because they're paying, and they like to be kept in the loop sometimes. But saying that, I've had some parents who just pay every week, don't want to know how little Freddie or Freddie's doing. They just go, I'm paying you, get it done, and that's fine. Um, so some of the things that I tend to try and do with that is again that conversation, if I can include the parents. Um, but self-reflection for me, I think, is a really good thing. Each of my learners have a progress report that is based on self-reflection, and it's similar to sort of the DVSA version, but I've done my own tweaks. So I think a lot of the time, if they're giving honest self-reflection and they can see that they're not ready for a test, that has a huge impact on whether they choose to go and do it. However, doesn't matter whether I have a really good rapport with them, their parents have a better rapport. So if Freddie's dad says, I think you should go and do it, I only did it in 2 hours, you're ready, there isn't a huge amount that I can sort of do to change their minds, other than those conversations in the early stages and throughout the training, where I point out to learners that they may think they're ready, or dad might think they're ready, but if they would like to use my car, then actually I have a higher standard than the test standard that people talk about. So if you reach my standard that I'm expecting, then yeah, I'm more than happy you borrow my car.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm sort of kind of along the same lines with the parents quite often because they're not in the car with you, and like you say, the standards maybe not as high. And I also wonder if maybe they're over helping sometimes and not realizing that they're not
Yeah.
actually truly independent, and therefore they're driving around okay because you're going, oh, it's this lane here. Um,
Yeah.
and so that can happen a lot. And I think, like you said, communication for me is the key. And you're right, the parents might are sometimes the person that you need to be communicating with. I'm always wary having that conversation at the end of the lesson that you include the pupil because it
Yeah.
very much feel like a parents' evening type vibe
Yeah.
where you're sat there talking about them. So I think it's a conversation together, because you, as much as the parent might be your client in terms of like money, the pupil's the one you need the rapport with. So if you're suddenly getting out of the car and then talking about them, that's just not going to end well for the next lesson. I love the self-reflection. I think everyone, and that's obviously going to come on to what we're talking about later. Um, but I think that was the big thing for me is I again didn't find that if I was moving a pupil's test back because they'd not got to the standard, I hardly ever had any pushback because it wasn't a surprise.
No.
This sort of thing because we've been having these conversations and being honest. And I wonder if that's part of it is it's not just the pupils' honesty in their reflections, but sometimes the instructors, I think sometimes I want to say too nice,
Yeah.
but you can do this in a nice way as well. But almost like not wanting, like trying to big them up, big them up, big them up. Maybe because you know the test is coming up and you're trying to build their confidence, and then suddenly the next week you're like, actually, yeah, you're not ready, and
Yeah.
they're like, whoa, where's this come from? Who's this instructor? And I think that can be quite crucial that you're honest as you go through, so it's not a sudden U-turn and surprise when you say no, you're not ready for your test. What are your thoughts on getting the parents sat in the back?
Um, I think it can be a really good thing as long as the pupil's on board with it. Then for me, I don't really see any negatives for it. I think there's only those positives. It demonstrates actually that what you mentioned, the parent might be giving them information without recognizing. But when I'm sat there truly getting them to be independent, I think it opens up that sort of conversation with the parent as well. And I know for me, as again, as long as the pupil is happy with this, I tend to get the parents to not, I was going to say intervene, but interact in the lesson. So we will have some conversation and some dialogue as well, because again, that's more real life, isn't it? The pupil's going to have people in the car, they're going to be having conversations. So yeah, I don't really see any negatives to it. I chat to my pupils all the time about these situations, and whether it's parents or guardians or family members or friends, I think it's only a good thing in my opinion.
Yeah, no, definitely, I agree. And like you said, you can link it to um how they're going to have their friends in the car as well. And I think actually that's something that people should be doing on their standards check. Um, when we talk about the examiner being in the back, it's quite often the common one that everyone talks about is the weight, the extra weight in the back. And I don't know about you, I sit in the back of a lot of lessons, and I'm starting to get a complex.
Yeah.
Um, um, but for me, that yes, that is obviously a factor and can be a factor with extra weight in the back. But then so is a full tank of fuel.
Yeah.
And for me, it should be more about how the distraction of having someone in the back and when might that happen post test and how are you going to manage that post test? I know you're not having a chat with the examiner, but it's still the fact he's there as a distraction. So, absolutely, that should be the conversation coming through. The other thing I think with the parents thing, and I 100% agree with everything you sort of kind of said, and the one thing I'd add was the sometimes and through no fault of our own, parents sometimes maybe think that we're ripping them off when we're saying they're not ready for tests. We're ripping them off. Yeah, it's a bit like for me. I always equate it to me going to a mechanic. I know nothing about cars. I'm rubbish with mechanics, and I go in, and the guy can say whatever he likes, and I just have to trust that he's not ripping me off. And I think sometimes, although they can drive, they don't know the test, they don't know the ins and outs. So when we're saying you need to move it back, it can sound like, yes, please give me some more money for a few more weeks.
Mm.
Whereas I think if you get them in the back of the car, they can see one, they'll see the standard that you're expecting from the student, and when what they thought was good driving and you're actually trying to develop them past that, they'll go,
Yeah,
oh, okay, so oh, okay, we're going beyond that, are we? But also they can just see that you are giving value for money and like physically see it. And I think that actually takes away a lot of arguments that they suddenly, because they've seen you in action,
yeah,
assuming you're doing a good job, they trust you a little bit more and they'll trust your judgment a little bit more. And I think that can be really beneficial. I also think it's really beneficial for future custom.
yeah,
When all these parents are having a chat around dinner table or whatever, and they're going, "Oh, who are you learning to drive with?" Because they're all turning 17 at the same time.
yeah.
Now, a lot of them will go, oh, and everyone will just list who their instructor is. But if they're able to say, well, I'm with Tom, and Tom let me sit in the back, and he was brilliant, and he did all this, and they give like specifics of what happened, like who are they going to go with? Like they're going to go with the one that had more detail and more information. So I think actually from a promotion point of view, sitting getting parents in the back is really useful if they're keen. And like you said, if the pupil, you don't want to do it if the pupil doesn't feel comfortable because it's not going to create a good environment.
No, I can't say that I've ever really had many pupils say, "Oh, I don't want mum and dad in the car,"
Mm.
because a lot of pupils are already learning with parents. But sometimes I think they realize that the lessons are different when they're with mum and dad, and mum and dad are, giving late directions or suddenly shouting or texting on their phone. But then they realize what a good lesson kind of looks like. I think sometimes there's sort of that balance that is a bit of a struggle for them. But I typically, I'd run it past them first of all. And actually, something that came to my mind a moment ago. Um, was the tick list that the DVSA use on the Ready to Pass campaign. Actually, I think that can be quite a good thing as well to give to the pupils or to say to the pupil, go and have a look at this. These are the 5 things you need to tick off before you take your driving test. Because for me, it's for some learners, it's that external verification. It's not just me, and they think, "Oh, Tom's just trying to rip me off." I go, "Well, hang on. This is what the DVSA want. They want you to have completed a mock test. They want you to be driving independently without help." So sometimes with some learners, I think that can be beneficial to prove that point as well.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. Although I think sometimes you send them off to that and they're like, yeah, I can do all
Mm,
that. There's
yeah.
element of delusion going on.
Well, yeah, and that's where that self-reflection and that conversation comes in. I think, there's always people out there who have that overinflated sense of self-worth. Um, but people don't know what they don't know, and
Hmm.
that's a thing that I see on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, this is not about those last few lessons. This is about the fact that all the way up, you've built this rapport. You've they've been evaluating and being part of their own progress. That actually, if you've done that with the pupil all the way through, that they are then a lot clearer about what the standard is that's required. So that's why you tend to not get this. I think it can be challenging if someone doesn't understand the system or if it's not been your pupil as well. That can
Yeah,
be quite challenging. And that in a way just shows that the whole, if you can take them through that process, it shows how that's so beneficial because there's no surprises. And that's for me, the one that really sort of kind of bugs my bear is when I see on Facebook someone saying, "Oh, I've got a test next week because my instructor's let me down." Clearly, the instructor hasn't let you down, but clearly the instructor has just told you you're not ready. But it does annoy me a little bit that it's a week before. Like
yeah,
that's not when we should be having that
no,
conversation. And I do feel for them that if I would be gutted if someone told me I can't take my test in a week's time
yeah,
because I've built up to it, I'm ready for it. Where's this come from? And so I think that's really important that when we're having this conversation, like for me, at least 4 weeks ahead of that test
yeah.
should be, if you're booking a mock test in, that's when it should be. So that it's not again, so you've got time to adjust, you've got time to move it if you need to. And yeah, so it's not this big surprise. It is for me.
And as professionals, I think most of us, most of the time, should be able to tell at least a month before their test that they're not ready. And I must admit, I have had, in the 12 years I've done this, I have had a couple of pupils where we have left it late. But that's only because, for some apparent reason, as we've got towards the test, their skill level has suddenly dropped. Sometimes it's been to nerves, sometimes there's family problems, whatever. So I can understand to a certain degree, but like you, I see it on Facebook and on social media, and when I chat to people, and they say, "Yeah, I had to tell them a few days before their test they weren't ready." And I think that shouldn't have been in that situation. You should have been having that conversation
Mm.
far before that point.
Yeah, no, definitely. I do wonder sometimes because the mock test is I always like would suggest that the mock test the way I always used to do it is in a way we built towards the mock test, not the driving test.
Mm,
So the goal was to be ready for the mock test,
yeah,
which is 4 weeks ahead. That gives us a buffer. It also means those last four weeks are just tidying up little bits.
yeah,
Um, and if they and I always think if you're moving that mock test further back because they're not ready for the mock test, don't take
yeah,
don't take them to a driving test.
no,
Like we won't do a mock test because it's going to go horribly wrong. Okay, well let's move the test now then because
yeah.
they're not going to magically become better in the next couple of weeks. And I always love how much emphasis we put on one more 2 hour lesson.
I
Just
know,
like
yeah.
just one more, we can do it. And can fix all your problems in 2 hours.
Mm.
But yeah, so yeah, anything else you'd like to add around anything you do particularly that maybe other instructors don't that helps with customer service?
I suppose one of the things that I tend to do, which is sometimes a negative, and I try and be as honest with learners as I can. So I only have a handful of learners because most of my work is instructor training and development. Um, but I do actually still like teaching learners. And I think for me, this is my personal view, I think it's good as a trainer to keep my eye in, so to speak. So, I'm keeping up with that. But so what I offer is as a trainer, I will supply learners for training sessions. So I had somebody recently come down from Nottingham, and I supplied a learner. So I don't charge the learner for this. They get the lesson for free, but we use them as a guinea pig. And I explain to them, this session isn't about you. You will get some free driving, but I'm here to help the trainee. So because I offer that, most of the time it's really effective. And lots of my learners text me saying, have you got any free lessons this week? And I'm open at the start when we have the conversation of what it's going to be like. But I have had a couple over the years that have found it frustrating because I'm not giving them the time that they want. And so that for me is a bit of a struggle. I'm trying to overcome that at the moment. But I think it's that conversation, and it I get people contact me from their friends who say, "Oh, you're teaching so and so," and they get free lessons. And I have to say, yeah, it's not that I'm just giving free lessons. There are reasons behind it. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the things that I have to kind of deal with. But it's very rare that pupils are unhappy because they get free lessons.
No, definitely not. That's something I do as well. Actually, is that free lesson option. I actually stopped doing learners in January,
Right.
but I keep my eye in because I take out some of my instructors' pupils every now and
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
um and use them as little guinea pigs, uh,
Yeah.
basically, and to do that, and like I said, the same sort of thing. If we need a pupil for a lesson, we just borrow someone who's I put a message out to the guys and say, well, first of all, who's going to be good, like, I want one that's going to talk to us.
Yeah.
And then go out and use them as our little guinea pigs, and like you say, they jump at the chance because it's a free lesson for them. And it, like I think as well, the important thing about those is, like you said, is you can make it about the PDI.
Yeah.
Like, no one, well, they might moan a little bit, but they get it because it's free. And when you pull over and you have a 10-minute chat with the PDI, it's not a big deal. Whereas if
No.
they're paying for that lesson, they're like, hey, what's going on here? Um,
Yeah.
on the occasions that we do it where they are paying for the lesson, if I do have to have that chat, I actually suggest that we just add on the time
Yeah.
an end, because it's that they deserve two
Mm.
hours of extra thing. Again, most of the time they don't complain though, because in a way what they've got is two instructors
Yeah.
helping out, so that they normally get a pretty damn good lesson on that lesson anyway.
And again, I think for me, that's all about that customer service. It's, if that pupil was if I was late for that lesson, I'd be doing the same thing. If they've paid for 2 hours, that's exactly what I want to deliver them. And sometimes things happen, and we get stuck in traffic, or your tire pops on the way, and all this stuff happens. So I think it's that sharing of that responsibility to say to the pupil, "I'm really sorry. I couldn't deliver the whole of your lesson, so let me add time on to the next one, or can we run a little bit later?" And again, it's all about that customer service.
Mm. Yeah, and communication as well, actually, because what you've just said there about like sometimes people will do that and add it on, so they'll maybe I don't know stop to go toilet, which is something I try and avoid doing, but sometimes you just need to. You've had too much coffee, and they will add it on, but not necessarily tell the pupil, and then the
No,
pupil doesn't notice,
yeah.
and then they're just a bit annoyed by the coffee thing.
Yeah.
But if you just say sorry about that, I'll make sure we finish 5 minutes later
Mm,
and everyone's happy. Like you say, the other thing to do is check that though, because
yeah,
don't know the people haven't got an appointment or something.
yeah,
Like you say, you can make up the time another time, but yeah, just and with that, I always used to make sure I made a note in the next lesson because you
yeah,
forget. And definitely. So yeah, I think communicating that is crucial as well. Because um, it's I don't know, just it's that perception of the time rather than just the actual time as well
yeah.
that I think can be really helpful.
The thing that you've highlighted there for me as well is the fact that it's really easy for us to assume, which I think is one of our big flaws as humans, not just driving instructors, how we often assume that we think something's okay, and that's why, like you say, let's have that communication with the pupil.
Yeah, it's really, you know, what I re remember that just prompted a memory of somebody thinking it was okay. Was my very, very first session out with a trainer. It was like the assessment drive. I didn't actually end up going with this company. And it was assessment drive, and we went for a little bit of drive, and we pulled in, and he went toilet, which now as an instructor, I'm like, not a big deal. But at
No,
the time, I was paying for this assessment lesson, and he got back in, and we carried on driving, and nothing really was said, and it felt like it was taking. I don't remember if he added on time or not, but
right,
it's exactly that. I felt hard done by.
yeah,
And I'm like sat there in the car on my own thinking, God, I'm paying for this. And I think it's that communication. Even before you get out of the car, I think that's when I would say it before I got out, rather than I was
yeah,
like, sorry, just need to run to the toilet. I'm probably will be about 2 minutes, but we'll add 5 minutes on the end, that
yeah,
sort of kind of thing. And I think that stops them sitting there like seething, sat in the car, sort of kind
yeah,
of like looking at the phone, texting their friends, going, "Oh, my toilet, he's gone, wasting my time," sort of kind of thing. It's just, yeah, yeah. I think, like you said right at the start about customer service is part of what we do. And maybe there isn't enough training about it, and I think that. Yeah, we just need, even if you're in a franchise, like you're the one dealing with the pupil, the customers, like one to one, and it's really crucial that we have this sort of communication with pupils. Okay, shall we move on to talking about the final competency and finally rounding these all off? So the last competency is at the end of the session was the pupil encouraged to reflect on their own performance. And what I find really interesting about this competency is the only one that has a specific time
yeah.
that it happens. All the other ones are across the whole lesson. So what I always do this, Tom, on the first one is just ask you guys what are your thoughts on that competency first.
I think it is an important competency, but I think what is sometimes lost in this is that not everybody can reflect at that point. If you've just had a 2 hour lesson, even though typically I try and break that down into smaller sections anyway, what I would tend to do is have an overview of the lesson as well. So whether it's with a trainee or a learner, I'd want to encompass what the pupil feels or the trainee feels about the lesson as a whole. But some people can't think there and then. Some people need to be able to go away and think more in depth. So they might give me some information at that point, what went well, what didn't go so well, what would they like to improve on. But some people are going to have a much better reflection, especially self-reflection, when they get to go away and do it. And I think that's sometimes lost. But I think if we look at the wording in the competency at the end of the session, was the pupil encouraged to reflect? So it isn't was the pupil reflecting? It's what did the trainer do to help them try and encourage? So that might be, Fred, I'd like you to go away. Give me a view now of what you think, and then go away, and then in a couple of days, drop me a text message, or on our next lesson, let's have a talk about what we think how you think the lesson went. So I'm giving that pupil more of those options than just going, right, in the 2 minutes I've got now on my part through a standards check, you've got to tell me how good the lesson was.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I do with my learners was we use Total Drive,
Yeah,
and you've obviously got your reflective logs within that. I'm assuming all the other apps have very similar reflective log systems. And the beauty of it is you can fill it out, or the pupil can fill it out. And
yeah,
the what I suggest for my guys to do is on those first few sessions that you fill it out together. So the pupil kind of gets used to
yeah,
the idea of what they're supposed, because it can be a bit daunting being sent home and
yeah,
you've got these questions and you're like, oh, I don't know, what's he want me to write? So just kind of you have the conversation and then you go, shall we fill this out together so you get an idea of how it works, and they can fill it out, but you're just helping them along. And you maybe do a few sessions like that, and then you go, actually, to save a little bit of time, do you want to go and fill that out at home, like you said, so they can reflect, and you're going to get, like you said, truer answers at home as well. I think they take time. And you might have to, with some people, send them a quick text message every now and again to say, hey, have you filled out your reflective log?
yeah,
Um, but yeah, it's hugely beneficial for them to do it that way, and you might have to effectively coach them into filling out reflective logs. I
yeah,
think I would be that person. Like if I was doing driving lessons now, and my instructor was asking me to fill reflect, I think I'd need a reminder
yeah,
because once I'm out of the lesson, I'm like it's gone, and I forget about it. So I'd almost have to either do it straight away or I'd need a reminder.
yeah,
So I think it's okay that your pupils aren't always, because they have lives, like they've got stuff going on.
yeah.
So if you want them to be doing this sort of stuff because it's beneficial, then set up some sort of system where you can remind them. Yeah.
And I think with some pupils as well, they're not so good at self-reflecting like that. Actually, there's sometimes their initial, I like this, I didn't like that, I thought that was good. But when they go away, they can almost overcomplicate things. So sometimes for some pupils, I don't think nagging them for their self-reflection is always going to be the best way. And for me, it just comes down to that sort of client-centered delivery where we're adapting to their needs and how they work as opposed to right, you've definitely got to do this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think if I've got a pupil who's not going to want to do it that way, I would probably either, like you say, not fill it in, or fill it in the car with them.
Yeah,
And go through it together, go through it with them, because yeah, everyone has their own ways of learning. I think it's also important with that is to remember that potentially a reflective log isn't their best way of reflecting.
no,
So potentially like a mind map or a
yeah,
mood board, or like if you've got someone who's really visual or something like that, they might want to just draw it or something like that. And I think they have that as an option, or have some sort of option that they can use. So if we bring this just back to the part three or the standards check, so because obviously said it, just sending them away to go do that thing so I can get 3 points,
yeah.
it is probably not going to work. So how do you have that conversation in the car at the end with if anyone's listening with their part three coming up, what would you suggest?
I tend to try and have two areas. So like I mentioned earlier, I'd want to have the lesson as a whole. So I'd like us to have an overview of how the lesson went. But I think it's also really important to bring up any potential safety critical or safety critical incidents that happened in the lesson. Because again, that pupil might have happened at the start of the lesson, and they've now had 30, 40 minutes to reflect on it, even if it's sort of in the back of their mind. So I'd want to bring that up again, even if we've had the conversation, because I think with some people, they actually go, yeah, actually, I've been thinking about it for the last 10 minutes, and I look at it this way now. And so that opens up that conversation. So I would get people to give an overview. I would also pick out the little parts of the lesson and see if we can discuss those as well. Because it might be that opens up sort of mini goals for our next lesson. It's not just, oh, next lesson we need to go and work on roundabouts, which is always my pet hate because I think, oh, it's just such a big subject, isn't it? It's not skills based.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my two things really, is have the lesson as a whole, an overview, but also pinpoint the important bits throughout that lesson as well for a discussion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I always like to also push on like what's gone well as well. I think you mentioned that in one of your questions a minute ago. One thing I think sometimes gets missed with what's gone well is why. Like, why
Yeah,
did it go well? I think we're quite good at going, why did it go wrong,
yeah,
but not why did it go well? And I think that's quite important to use in that moment of like effectively it's what have you learned? Effectively that's what that question is. Like, what are you going to carry on doing next time to make sure it carries on go well? So I think that's important when you're going through the positives to just dig a little bit more. And I wonder if that's where maybe people lose points on this a little bit sometimes. It's not going in, not going like they just have that surface level question and not the follow-up question. I think that's important to sort of kind of get them sort of kind of doing it. The other one I can sometimes see this one being an issue is sort of kind of false feedback. So you've got this scenario where the instructors maybe just done their part three, they're panicking a little bit because in their mind it's not gone as well as it could have gone. So they're thinking if I just say lots of really good stuff now, the examiner will be like, "Oh, actually, no, that lesson did go well," and I think that can be quite like the examiner's not going to be sat there just because you're saying, "Well done, this was brilliant, fantastic." They're not going to be like, "Oh yeah, no, it was fantastic." So I think be honest with the feedback. If it hasn't gone well, if
yeah,
stuff has been going wrong and you need to carry and you need to like use that as development points, you're far better to sort of kind of recognize that
yeah.
and set them as development points than to try and brush over them and ignore the fact that they went wrong. Do you see guys doing that a lot, or is that
Yeah, I think a lot of the time as well for trainees, they're not necessarily thinking about this because they're thinking, "Oh my God, I'm back at the test center. What's happened? What result am I going to get?" And the conversations that I've had with ADI examiners, the unfortunate thing is, even if by the time the examiners got back at that point, they probably know whether it's a pass or fail. Well, they do know whether it's a pass or fail. So it's unlikely that even if you give the best competency for at the end of the session, it isn't going to really waver on what the examiner's already decided. But I would still be pushing, and like you say, I'd be going deeper with that pupil to kind of work out what it is because I still want to know for our next lesson whether I've passed or whether I've failed. How do you feel about that lesson? What went well? What didn't go so well? And I think it's a really important thing that you mentioned earlier that we often focus on those bad points. But I often say to my learners, what was the ingredients that made it go well? And how can we add the ingredients into the next lesson? So if you've now put something else in, if you need to develop something, what ingredients can we stick in there that's going to make it good? Because I like donuts, and so that's a good thing. That's going to include in my diet, and that's always going to make me happy.
nice? I think I get hungry on your lessons.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think actually you sort of kind of touched on something about the at the end there where a PDI maybe or an ADI is you've got to the back and almost you're done, and
yeah,
and I think that can sometimes cause a problem with this because you end up rushing this to
yeah,
get it finished, and I think it's quite important that even if you're back late, that it's better to spend a little bit of time
yeah.
get getting this bit right. The examiner will be fine with that. They're okay with sitting there for a few more minutes while you just do your debrief. Like, don't waffle, and go on and on. I've been sat in the back of part threes before, and I can see the examiners like packing up and doors halfway open, sort of thing. And that's maybe the clue to shut up. Um,
Well,
but
actually, saying that, I've been in quite a few where the examiner has said to the PDI, "Look, carry on with your debrief. I've heard and seen enough. I'm going to go and do the marking. You guys can finish up."
oh, nice.
So
Yeah.
actually, then, like the PDI, I think that's a great thing because the PDI is thinking, "Oh, okay, I can waffle on a little bit more, I can add that little bit much. However, 90% of the time when the examiner gets out, the PDI suddenly goes, oh, thank God that's over with.
Yeah, it stops talking.
Hang
Yeah.
on, weren't you going to finish the debrief now?
Yeah, no, it's not important anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
You can't hear it. What's the point?
yeah,
Yeah, no, definitely. It's yeah, and like you said, they've heard enough, and I think that was a good point as well. That you're right, examiners by that point, within like apart from maybe the marginal ones, that they know whether they're a pass or not. And it might make a difference between a couple of points, but I don't think it necessarily makes a difference between a pass or a fail. That
no, no,
so I think even like because it's just not the way their minds necessarily work. Well, I don't know because I'm not an examiner, but in my mind, they know it's a 29, and then effectively make the numbers match 29, if that
yeah,
makes sense, rather than go through the numbers, go through and go, okay, that's a 2, that's a 3, that's a 4, and then get to 29. I think it's the other way
yeah.
around.
Yeah, like
Um,
they're not suddenly surprised and go, "Oh, by the way, Phil's passed."
yeah,
They know
yeah,
when they get out their car, it's a pass or a fail, and then the numbers are then linked as a representative of kind of what's happened in that lesson. So
yeah. Which is why I think sometimes, actually, it's kind of going off topic, but similar. Why I think sometimes that when you are looking at your test result sheet, to not put too much emphasis on like one number being just like that doesn't make sense to me,
yeah,
because it is probably just a case if they were trying to get that overall score for you.
yeah,
And it isn't just necessarily that one number made a difference. To be honest, it'd be quite interesting to speak to an examiner and see what they say. But that's the way I sort of have seen the marking system. They certainly tend to they know to link certain competencies. So
yeah,
getting a one in like the classic one is goal setting, where if you get a one and in um what's the first one? Did it
goals and
trainer
needs.
identify? Yeah, goals and needs. Then you're probably getting a one in number
Yeah,
3 and 4. You might get a higher score in practice area because you
yeah,
happen to be in the right area, but with the wrong goal. Then yeah, those are all massively linked.
yeah.
Yeah, but it's not just like it's not this tick box exercise. Like
No.
this competency is probably the only one that is this.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, this
The
is the standalone, really, isn't it?
Yeah, whereas all the other ones, it's just an overall vibe of the lesson. So I'm just looking at the what the positives from the examiner and the what's to avoid. So one of the what's to avoid is and I suppose this can happen is leaving the pupil feeling like you were in control of the debrief. So that I can see happening quite a lot where it's who's doing the talking basically. Um, and definitely getting that scenario that do you ever put like a percentage on it, like in those like who should be doing the chatting or like a rough like when you're telling your
Um,
PDIs?
well, I say that I'm a lazy instructor and I want to try and do as little as possible. And, if I can get paid to do as little as possible, it sounds great. And so that's where I would kind of go. And I think it does link to this one. The amount of conversations I have with trainers who say, especially if they come and sit in on a lesson, oh, your pupils are all really talkative, you're really lucky. I go, okay, so you're assuming that it's not the work that I've put in the early stages to get this conversation going and this responsibility. You're assuming that it's just chatty pupils. And this, for me, this end competency is exactly the same. I want them to be able to self-reflect. And whatever system that people use, whether it's fault identification, fault analysis, and remedial action, that's what I want my pupil to do because that's what they need to do when they're driving independently. Is to go, oh, I didn't do so well here. Next time, perhaps I should have gone a little bit slower because I would have benefited this way. Well, those are the skills they need, and this is them reflecting on their performance. I know we have another competency about feedback earlier on, but specifically at the end of it, when they get home from their drive in real life, I want them to think about it. I nearly ran that person over today. What were the ingredients that led to that? What can I take out to not do it next time? And those are the types of things I try and get trainees or instructors as well to think about is are you telling them? Is it just you saying you were really good today, Fred, or you didn't do so well there? or are they truly thinking about what they did and how they did it?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I love the whole lazy instructor thing. I regularly describe myself as a lazy instructor. Like the less I can work, the better. That is the way I go for that. Yeah, brilliant. The only other bit I want to just touch on here is where it says use tools and techniques to encourage self-reflection skills. So I think sometimes potentially people maybe read this and think that they have to do scaling or mind maps or something like that. And obviously there are benefits to those tools
Yeah,
and use, but I you can get marked down for using them badly.
yeah.
So I think that's important. Is that something you get your PDIs using, or is that something you try and maybe wait for later on in their PDI career, ADI career?
I mean, what I tend to do, actually, I love mind maps, so I have a bias with them. But actually, that's one of the first things I would do with a trainee when they come to me for their first session. I'd get them to do a mind map. But the reason I get them to do it is not so I go, I love them, you have to do them. I want to get them to recognize the tool that we've just used. And so then sometimes it works for them, sometimes it doesn't. So I want them to recognize just because it didn't work for you doesn't mean it isn't going to work for other people. And as a client centered instructor, I want to try different things with different people and see what works. So, like with that, I would get my pupils to try lots of different things and then get their opinion. What did you like? What didn't you like? What worked for you? What didn't work? And then I get a better understanding of how that pupil is benefiting. And the same for, a trainee or an instructor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually by the time you're taking this pupil to a standard check or part three, you should probably have an idea of
Yeah,
what their preferred style of reflection is.
yeah,
It's like we were talking about earlier with reflective logs might not be that pupil's like bag sort of kind of thing. And I'm trying to think what I would prefer if I was doing regular lessons with someone. I'm not sure I would enjoy a reflective log. It's not my
no,
style, like writing something down. Maybe a mind map would be better for me, or maybe even just like an audio version of it. That's actually something we never even mentioned that could be an option is
yeah,
somebody leaving you a voice note,
yeah.
and something like that of their reflection, which is quite would be quite interesting
And
to
again, it's just trying those different things with the pupil in the early stages to work out what does work and perhaps what hasn't been of a benefit. And the term is often thinking outside the box, but I call it thinking outside the car. So, do things that you might not normally think of. Um, and I'm sure you've had it with learners where you're getting to the point where you're thinking, oh gosh, this is getting really difficult. And just out the blue, you think of something and it works and you think, oh man, I wish I'd have thought about that, 2 weeks ago. So just try lots of different things and work out while you're having a conversation with that pupil what is working and what isn't working.
yeah, they're quite often your best pupils, the ones that struggle and
Mm,
don't quite just get it because they're the ones where you come up with all you basically start filling your toolbox with
yeah,
new types because they make you think and they make the
yeah,
normal way of fixing it doesn't work for them and you have to and then suddenly that new way is that it's now there in your toolbox for next time someone struggles or just for any people that you think this might be a better way of going about it. Yeah, absolutely. um Anything else you want to add to this competency or around this?
No, well, yeah, I think I could talk all day about it, to be honest, but I think we've kind of covered the main bits that I would normally cover in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. So, before we wrap up, I obviously we'll be getting your top tip to round off the season of top tips. But before we do that, do you want to take an opportunity to tell everyone where they can find you and how to get in touch?
You can find me on audit-trainer.com. That's my website. And that's my training establishment for ADI training and development. Or you can contact me through the ADI NJC, and my contact details are on the website there as well.
Brilliant. And so just what if somebody was interested in getting in touch with you, like what sort of things you mentioned earlier about having like what in car training with and you provide the pupil. Is there anything else that you sort of
Yeah,
come?
so I mean, I deliver training for everything from part one, part two, part three. I do a reasonable amount of train the trainer as well. So if people are looking at moving into instructor training, that's another area that I help with. But yeah, it can be anything from people starting their career to those who've been in the industry for many years. I'd like to think that I would learn new things as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So then before we head off and finish off this season, what is your top tip for instructors and out there?
I think the thing that helped me the most is, and I mentioned earlier, people don't know what they don't know. And I think it's really easy for us to just sort of lie on those things that we think we know. So CPD is a big thing for me. I spend a huge amount each year on CPD. So work out what it is that you don't know and fill in those gaps because I think we've all got a responsibility to raise the standards, not just the L test standards, but part three standards checks, audits, whatever it's going to be. We all have a responsibility, and I think if we can fill in the gaps that we've all got, the industry would be, would benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't even have to just be driving instructor related. Like it's so we were talking earlier about customer service. Like if it feels like a weakness to you, then go do a customer service course of
Yeah.
some sort. Um, so one last question then before you go, it is what's your current CPD? What you doing at the moment?
Okay, so at the moment, I have booked on to Lisa Dawn's level one and level two in driver psychology. However, I have had to move one of the dates, which was rather unfortunate. So I'm looking at doing those at the end of the year. I've currently got I'm just starting my level five in coaching and mentoring. And I've got my ROSPA advanced driving test reassessment coming up again. So those are the things that I've imminently got over the next few months.
So not much then.
No.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I must admit, I'm very much considering doing Lisa Dawn's course.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about it, and it's something that interests me.
Mm,
And again, it's building on things that I don't know, what I don't know, and the more I can fill that gap, the better it is. I think not just for me, but my trainees, my learners.
yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming on and
Oh,
sharing your.
thank you for inviting me.
No worries. Thank you. Inspire Instructor Podcast, where the learning never stops.